thank you so much for joining me at the Citrix Developer Theater. I'm excited to be here today at Synergy. Today I'll be talking about mobile reference architecture and specifically featuring an app that we built that is Citrix Ready, Works Verified, using the Works SDK called AnyProject. I am Susan Miller, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for a company called AnyPresence. So I'll share a little bit of background and context on our company and who we are, but we're going to focus the bulk of this conversation on some education around a mobile reference architecture, developer trends, and what we've been seeing out there in the marketplace. And then I'll walk through some of the ways that the partnership with Citrix has helped us to address those needs with customers, and we'll share one specific example around AnyProject. So first of all, who are we and why are we in this space and how am I a mobile expert? So AnyPresence is a cloud-based platform and backend as a service. You could think of it as a code generation engine at its heart. And what we're doing is helping companies accomplish two things. So one is building apps faster. So we spend all day, every day in this developer world, in this space, talking to companies about how they can get the right types of integrations and parse the data correctly, and how they can accelerate development for multiple different platforms. So for their iOS and Android and HTML5 and Windows 8 Phone and Java for their web apps, how they can control the access, security, policies, and governance. And we found for many of these needs that Citrix has been a great partner for us in providing some of the enterprise capabilities on top of our mobile platform. So on the one hand, we're building apps faster, and on the second, we're doing something really innovative that you can't find anywhere else. And that is around our designer itself, we've built an API, and what that enables you to do is be in your own IDE or developing apps on a customer site. Instead of stopping at APIs, we're enabling you to make a call to our designer and allow your employee developers, your customers or partners or third-party developers to be able to build apps faster, configured to their particular use case by making a call to AnyPresence, leveraging all the great technology in our designer, and generating native code as the output. So pure, native, human-readable code, truly portable. So let's start by talking about some of the development trends that we've been seeing. So certainly there are higher expectations for anybody who is building mobile or web apps. We're seeing changes and constructs around budget and timing and requirements and integration. And I think it certainly makes your jobs more complex as you're thinking about a developer building enterprise-class mobile apps. And the good news is there are lots of tools. And what we're seeing right now is companies and developers looking for the maximum flexibility in terms of the types of support that they can get to address each of these individual concerns. So in particular, as we look back and think about, well, how did developers accelerate enterprise-class development in the past? And what we saw was the emergence of a trend back in 2007 for 4 or 5 years or so, where there were these companies emerging that would be an alternative to native development. Companies didn't have in-house skills, and they wanted acceleration. They wanted to build for multiple platforms at once. And so as a result, you saw the emergence of these companies who were building platforms that would develop code in a proprietary language, but allow you to accelerate that app development process. What we're seeing now, and where AnyPresence, my company, fits in, is a new trend where companies are looking to have that pure native and human-readable code. They don't want an alternative to other tools, they want a complement. So they want the flexibility to be able to use Xcode and open up their Apple Storyboard metadata, or to be able to get into their XML layout in their Android Developer Toolkit, or to use Xamarin, or whatever your choice of tool might be. They want the flexibility to build in multiple languages, to deploy wherever they want, whether on-premise, in the cloud, HIPAA-compliant hosting, you name it. And they want the flexibility to incorporate any different type of security tools that they might want to. So whether it's the Works SDK or other integrations that they might need to meet their enterprise requirements. So big picture, what you saw was this shift from an alternative to native development to tools and resources that can help you complement it. So let's dive into the mobile reference architecture and what we're seeing from all of the many, many conversations we've had with enterprise clients to some of the recommendations that we might have if you're starting to think about what you will implement at your company. So we're really seeing a 3-tiered, layered process right now at companies. So when you think about your architecture, the first step is going to be those data sources and systems, and thinking about how do I have great connectivity to those data sources and systems. Second, on top of that, is there a requirement for a mobile services layer? And then at the final end of your stack, the UI layer and your mobile presentation. So we'll talk a little bit about the source systems. So at the bottom of your stack, you have your enterprise systems. You might have your service bus, your CMS, or any different inputs that are feeding into your app. We're seeing modern enterprises building lots of RESTful APIs so that they can draw in their REST web services. You might have SOAP, you might have OData. There are many alternatives as companies are thinking about what is the best way to get quick access to all of these source systems. Sometimes the right answer is connecting directly to them, and that requires some heavy lifting and facilitation on the back end. From there, you'll have your mobile middle layer, and in that middle layer, in many of these cases where, for example, an enterprise app might be a composite app or a mashup. So I have data coming in from multiple different data sources to mobilize this workflow. I think gone are the days and what we're seeing where someone wants to take SAP and just have a mobile SAP. What we're seeing now is companies really being thoughtful around how do I mobilize my business? What is the process or what is the workflow for this function or this user role or this group? So when you think about a project manager, do they need access to their Podio? Do they need access to ShareFile or their CA Clarity or BMC trouble tickets? What are all the inputs that they might have as they're building out their process? And often, if you have SAP and Oracle both present in one app, how do you know what are the user roles and authentication that trumps? Which one should I be prioritizing? And so as a result, we're seeing more and more enterprise use cases for composite apps to truly facilitate a mobile workflow that require a middle layer to have app-specific logic so that I can say, in this scenario, I have different user roles than I might have seen in my original source systems. You're also seeing app-specific logic. So, I might be creating new data sources or new data fields where I have when this piece of information meets this piece of information, I need it to leverage some mobile services and send a push notification to this audience or this group. So what you're starting to see is the emergence of app-specific business logic, things that didn't behave the same way in the original applications you may have had. And then second, on top of that, the desire to have SMS and email and push notifications all incorporated into your app. And so that would be, if you're thinking about your design for your mobile reference architecture, and for your company, any of those pieces might be an element of the apps that you're building, then you would have a great need for a mobile middle layer for your app. From there, we look at the presentation layer, and this is where on the prior slide we talked a little bit about where trends are going. In the past, I think there were more trends for this alternative proprietary language, proprietary code, write once, run everywhere. What we're seeing now is companies want the acceleration of code generation for multiple platforms, but they want the flexibility to be able to use whatever tool they want to actually finalize their app. And so, that might be using a Xamarin or an Xcode or an XML layout in your Android developer toolkit, but ultimately, it's all about giving a developer the freedom and the flexibility to make their own choice as they think about building out that presentation layer. So what we're typically seeing is that as best we can, enterprise apps are trying to avoid client-side logic. What they want to do is have all of the heavy lifting and complexity of the app be in the back-end server, in that mobile middle layer. So the front end is more about just the user experience and the user interface. We're also seeing other trends for prototyping tools. So as you think about building out your mobile reference architecture, one of the things that you'll want to consider is what are the right types of tools to give you a quick preview of how your API is feeding into this app, or how is it rendering, and what is the flow for that app. So we see a lot of requests from customers to have a quick preview that they can get a quick understanding. It could be for a proof of concept for a customer or for an internal customer if they're building out a use case. So in sum, when you're thinking about your mobile reference architecture, you want to have 3 layers. Think about each of these overall for your architecture and then for app-specific use cases. So here's where we fit in. So AnyPresence has built, of course, the flexibility to have any or all of those pieces as you're building out the app. And typically what we'll see is everything below the dashed line in the middle of the page, so that big blue box and below, would be what we would consider the back end of an app. And so we have been, collaborating with our developer community to build out a very extensible platform, giving you flexibility around the things where we're seeing the trends dictate. So everything from flexibility for the user roles and authentication, whether I want to use my LDAP or Active Directory or SAML 2.0, OAuth 2, or I start to think about the data sources, I mentioned before, it's SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, you name it, range of different pieces that are coming in, and then all of the third-party services and extensions. So if I want to incorporate many of the great SaaS products, for example, from Citrix. So we have many customers who have demand to have their ShareFile or their GoToMeeting or their Podio APIs incorporated into an app, and they're looking for a way to do that really easily. Of course, on top of all of that, as you think about the user roles and authentication, the app that I'm going to showcase in just a minute also incorporates the Works SDK, which is, again, a great way, as you think about building out your apps and what should be components of your mobile reference architecture, to be able to have the security and governance and distribution controls around the use cases that you're building out. So from there, that's all the back end. Then you're going to have a nice, clean, RESTful API that'll allow any user interface you build to interact with that back end and mobile middle layer. For AnyPresence, the platforms that we generate would be iOS, Android, HTML5, Windows 8 Phone, and Java for your web app. But interestingly, the architecture is here's a new term for you guys, a polyglot architecture. What that means is that as you have a demand for a new language or as something new comes up, let's say Go is emerging as a nice back-end language, beyond the Ruby and Node.js that we're generating, maybe that'll be a new language. And the nice thing about a polyglot architecture, which you can see from all the languages represented here, is that you'll have the flexibility to be able to configure it how you'd like. So let's take an example. So looking at project management, so knowing what we all know now about your mobile reference architecture, let's think about how you would build a project management app yesterday. So yesterday, it might be pen and paper. It might be spending a lot of time in lots of different systems, a lot of internal meetings. And what we're seeing today is that instead, what companies are looking to do is say, okay, what are all the composite elements and different source systems that I might want to feed into one app? How do I build out something that can have different user roles for the different folks who might be participating in an app? How do I leverage, again, think about that middle layer. How do I have app-specific logic? And how do I enable some of those mobile services? So things like, particularly for project management, when a task is completed or when a deadline is approaching, how am I sending email notifications to specific project groups? Or SMS or push notifications to folks who have a deadline approaching? So you build all of that out and you think through the workflow and you think through the systems and the user roles and the integration, and then you're still stuck with all the dilemmas around the security and the policies and the distribution. And so this was one of the reasons why we collaborated with Citrix to incorporate the Works SDK and help address many of those challenges. So what we've done is, for AnyPresence, we would log into the cloud-based designer, build out the integrations to those data sources, parse through the data, do your object modeling and your business logic, add in any of those mobile services, generate your user interface. You'll actually design your user interface and then actually generate, in the cases where you need it, a dedicated back-end server. For those where you don't, connecting directly to the source systems or the APIs. From there, you'd have your mobile SDKs, and then on top of that, the user interface. And then a very easy way to quickly incorporate the Works SDK so that you, too, can have a Citrix-ready Works verified app as the output. So this process allows you to not only have the acceleration of the back end and that mobile middle layer, the acceleration of multiple different languages being generated, but also being able to address many of those enterprise security, governance, and IT policy concerns that the Works SDK so easily addresses. So for today's AnyProject app, not yesterday's project management app, what we've been able to build in collaboration with Citrix is a very nice enterprise project management solution supporting your ability to not only look at the discrete tasks and deadlines and dates, but really nice in a fit with, again, Citrix, with nice collaboration across your team, tailoring to different work styles and the different needs of those audiences, fully secure with enterprise quality and controls around it. And so as an example, just to give you a sneak preview, this app is available in the Citrix Works gallery. So for anybody who would like to download it, you can go today to Citrix Works and be able to see all these many great features. So if you're thinking about building out an enterprise mobile reference architecture, or if you want to say, okay, what was a quick way that we were able to leverage that mobile architecture to be able to build a quick, high quality, very secure app leveraging the Citrix Works SDK, you can go ahead and download it right now from the Works Ready store, where you'll be able to see some of the features such as things like your projects and status, the CRUD operation so that you can edit bidirectionally, edit some projects, stakeholders, and assignments. So thank you so much for your time today. We certainly appreciate the opportunity to teach a little bit about mobile reference architecture at Synergy. We've really enjoyed the collaboration with Citrix and the great benefits that we've seen from the Works SDK, and we look forward to working with you further.